Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast, where we focus on how authors found success, looking at strategies that have taken them to the top of the bestseller charts, as well as what they've learned from their mistakes. Because being an indie author is more than knowing the latest marketing trend. It's about being innovative and creative and learning from your mistakes. Your co-hosts, Jami Albright and Sara Rosette, couldn't be more different. In fact, they're a study in contrasts. However, despite all of their differences, they agree that sharing what they wish they'd known, both the good and the bad, is the key to moving forward. Let's get to the show.
Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sara Rosette.
And I'm Jami Albright.
And this week we have an interview with Shea MacLeod. And it is such an interesting interview. I think people are really going to learn a lot about what Shea has done. Is she's really good at analyzing why something's not working of her own books, and then figuring out how to change it and make it sell better. So we really dug into all that and everything she wished she had known. So I think it'll be really good.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And I think it's really important because, she's not precious about things. If it's not working, fix it. So
yeah,
I love that. So what's been going on with you?
This week I've been doing a lot of like admin stuff just for the business. And then I finally decided that I'm just going to do some translation stuff myself. Like I'm going to outsource it. I got an offer and I just decided that it would just from a traditional publisher in Germany. And I decided it would be better probably in the long run for me just to do it. So I'm going to use Reedsy. I've been on there looking for translators. I'm emailing back and forth. So I'm just starting the process.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'll let everybody know. And I was thinking we should try and get Ricardo on to talk to him about Reedsy and all that stuff.
I always love talking to Ricardo.
He's got a great accent. So not a lot for me this week. And I'm trying to get some writing done, but I feel like I'm like inching along, not making much progress there. But
well,
what about you?
Well, this week has been a little bit of a big week. It's my cover reveal.
Nice.
It's on Tuesday, and that's just gone so much better than I could have ever dreamed it would have gone. Really, the response has been amazing. The cover and the blurb seem to work really, really well together. I'm so grateful, and I've gotten a couple of notes from my proofreaders telling me how much she's loving the book, so that makes me feel like the book will live up to the hype of the cover and the blurb.
No pressure there.
Yeah, no pressure. But so that's really all I've been doing is pre-release stuff, which, I've got a list as long as my arm of things I need to do. I'm going to try something different this time with my second epilogue. I'm going to do just a short scene from the next book, and then I'm going to put the book up for pre-order. So, this is going to be a long pre-order because I don't release very fast. Yeah. So, but I'm going to try it because here's why. Because I get one time to, change the pre-order. And
so there you go.
But I just felt like I like that idea. I think it's a good time to grab people when they're really interested in the next book. And so I'm going to try it. I've never done it. My pre-orders, I do have this book up for pre-orders, and I've gotten over 100 pre-orders just in a couple of days, and so that's been amazing. And so I'm going to try it with this book, and we'll see. I'll report back if it was a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I'm always trying something different. I don't.
But then you probably find some things that work and some things that don't. You keep the ones that do, and everything's changing all the time anyway. So.
Right. And because I release so infrequently, by the time I release another book, a lot of the things I did for the last book don't really work as well as they did back then. So, so I'm excited. It's been a good week. It is exhausting, but it's been very good.
Yeah. Oh, and I had something else I was going to tell you about. The Kobo podcast. They had a podcast on audiobooks, and since everyone was so interested in Amy Dawes and her, how she was promoting audiobooks, that I thought I'll link to this one because Kobo has their own platform. So for audiobooks. So if you're wide and non-exclusive with your audio, you can list your audiobooks there. And they had all kinds of tips and stuff in there on how to promote specifically on Kobo. They have things tell about how they can generate coupons for you to give away and all this stuff that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so I'd always just listed my books, my audio on Findaway, but now I'm thinking I probably should also upload them on Kobo just to take advantage of the promotion opportunities there. So I'll link to that. So I thought that was could be really helpful.
Yeah, it could be. I'm actually 95% sure I'm going to do the audio for this book myself, or no,
Outsource it.
I'm going to outsource it, yeah, because my other 4 are with a publisher, which they've been great and I love, but I want to try doing it on my own and see what happens. Again, it's all about
control,
y'all, and control, yeah. But it's really a lot about just trying different things, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, you know that, and you go on to the next thing. I think a lot of times with indies, we feel like if it doesn't work, we're ruined. But that's not it. That's there's hardly a mistake. That's the basis of our podcast.
That you cannot learn from or recover.
Yes, exactly. Learn from or recover from. And so, so I'm going to try that this time. But I'm going to wait. I could have tried to do it before the book came out, but it would have made the release later. So I'll do it as soon as the book comes out, start investigating all that. But I mean, I pretty much know what I'm going to do, but
Yeah. But there's only so much you can do, at once. So.
At one time. Yeah, I absolutely can't. Certainly not with my pandemic brain. So, But, that's what's going on. And I hope everyone's having, good week and enjoying sunshine if you've got sunshine where you're at. Get on to our interview with Shea because it was awesome.
Yes. All right. Sounds good. Today we have Shea MacLeod with us. Hi, Shea.
Hi.
Hi, Shea.
Hello.
Shea MacLeod is the author of urban fantasy, post-apocalyptic, sci-fi, contemporary, and paranormal romances and cozy mysteries. She has dreamed of writing novels since before she could hold a crayon. After a 6-year sojourn in London, England, a dearth of good donuts has driven her back to her hometown. She now resides in the leafy hills outside of Portland, Oregon, where she indulges her fondness for strong coffee, ancient aliens, reruns, lemon curd, and dragons, because everything's better with dragons.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And was it Voodoo Donuts that drew you back to Oregon?
Well, just donuts in general.
Donuts are always a good thing.
Donuts and dragons.
Pretty much.
There's a cozy mystery for you.
That's what keeps authors ticking over.
Exactly.
That's right.
So, Shea, tell us we talked about your genres, but do you write in some more than others, or is it kind of
equally? Right now I'm focusing on cozies. I started back in 2011 with sort of like urban fantasy and paranormal romance and post-apocalyptic and stuff like that, and I wrote that and focused on that for like a number of years, and then switched over to cozies probably about 3 years ago. And so I'm not saying I'll never write in those other things again, but I haven't in a while. I'm pretty focused on the cozies because they're fun.
Yeah, they're fun. They're fun. And you're smart to kind of pick a genre and, devote your
because
time.
I was kind of all over the place doing because I read like that. I read lots of different things. So, but it's hard to build a following when you're not writing in one thing. So.
We've talked about that a lot on the podcast, how, it may seem like not as much fun to pick one genre and write in it, but if you want to make money, that's kind of the best way to do it.
Absolutely. And like with cozies, I focus on cozies, but I write in 3 different subgenres of cozy. So I can get out all of that, do the contemporary thing, do the historical thing, do the paranormal thing. And I can kind of get all those interests in.
Yeah. Well, you said that you wanted to write, or you dreamed of writing novels since you could hold a crayon. That's what your bio says. So how did you get into writing? I mean, did you?
Well, I mean, literally, my aunt tells me that I used to sit in the back seat of their car and like I couldn't even like talk really other than a few words. And she's like, you just ramble on. And it was clear you were telling this story. We had no idea what you were saying, but it was clear you were telling a story and you were just fascinated by it. And I have zero memory of this. This is what she says. But definitely, my mother, you know, would take us to the library and get picture books. And I always liked the ones that, you know, had like a little mystery. And I was like, I kind of wanted to do something like that, but I didn't really know what that meant. But it was when I picked up my first Agatha Christie, I was about 11, that I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to write stories. And so, you know, I wrote over the years just for myself, but the 2011, I published my first novel. So that was everything coming together, I guess.
That is very
fantastic.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. I didn't read Agatha Christie until I was older. So I was in like my 20s. And so, yeah, a lot of people find her when they're really young. I think Agatha Christie and Nancy Drew are two huge influences.
Well, yeah,
on
I started
writers.
with Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys and that sort of thing. But then I read all the ones that were at our little library, and I was like, I need more like this. Well, there wasn't, you know, there wasn't for my age group.
Right.
So, you know, I can't remember if my mother or the librarian showed me Agatha Christie and was like, they probably figured it was safe because, you know, there's nothing too adult except for murder.
Right. And that's fine, right? Yeah. I mean, that's totally not going to upset a little kid. Yeah.
No. Well, it didn't upset me, and I'm not sure if I should be worried about that.
No, I don't think so.
That's hilarious.
So after publishing, you know, you got started publishing. So what would you say was your first big success? And then also, like, what was there a point when like you leveled up, like you felt like you'd start out and then you reached a new level?
So I found success very early. I published my first book. This was my Sunwalker saga, which is like a urban fantasy paranormal romance. And I published the first book at the end of June 2011, and I published the second book in like, I don't remember, September maybe, or July. Anyway. And by the end of September, I was able to quit my job. Because I was, you know, I was making probably 4-5 times a month at that point when I was making at my job. Wow, and my job was ending anyway, because it was a temporary job. And so it was kind of like, it was kind of a perfect time. Just don't get another job. You know? And so, so that, and I was very successful with that for a while. And, I would say instead of leveling up, I kind of leveled down because I did a stupid thing. I mean, I think it's stupid. For me, it was a terrible decision. I signed those first 3 books in that series with a publisher, and they promised, of course, the moon and the stars, and they tanked my income by a significant amount, like immediately, with just poor management and lack of promotion. And it was not good. So over the next few years, it just kind of kept going down and down. And I was like, and I kept putting stuff out thinking something will stick. It wasn't until I just pivoted and went for a totally new genre. That's when I leveled up, and I actually had my first 6-figure year. Wow. So I just had to do something completely different than what I was doing.
Yeah. And sometimes I think that's common, is like if you switch to something, maybe a new genre, or you try something new, maybe you try ads when you hadn't tried before or something. Sometimes that's just the thing that'll push you over the edge and get you going again. Yeah, it certainly did for me, because I was just almost panic writing at this point, because my sales had by I think it was 2017 was my worst year. Like my sales were like a third of what they'd been in 2011.
And I mean, I was still making probably about what I would have made working for somebody, but it wasn't it wasn't what I wanted, you know. And I was constantly just putting stuff out real fast, and it wasn't getting any traction. So I was like, you know, I just have to do something completely different, reinvent myself. So I did, and it worked.
Yeah,
So,
that's great.
Yeah.
So we ask our guests, what do you wish you'd known about writing and craft when you first started?
Well, it would have been great if I would have settled in my sort of method of how I write the best. But that's just something that comes with experience.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And yeah, so I don't think there's any way I could have known. I sure wish I knew where some trends were going.
Don't we all?
But I mean, to be honest, I wish I would never have signed that. I wish I knew more about the publishing industry. I actually didn't find out that self-publishing was a thing that you could do until April of 2011. And then I was like, oh, well, let's try this thing. So I didn't know. There was a lot I didn't know, but I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's kind of the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know until.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think you know, and back then there weren't a lot of the marketing things that we have now. BookBub wasn't a thing. Amazon ads weren't a thing. I think Facebook ads were, but nobody really knew what to do with them. So, I mean, definitely one of the things that I very much wish I did then, and I knew I should have done it then, it was start a newsletter and my own mailing list from day one.
Yeah. And
I didn't do that. I was like, well, Amazon will just let people know when I have a new book out. Yeah, that was not a bright move. I would say it's the only thing you own,
right?
Your website and your newsletter list. And Amazon giveth and Amazon take the way. And you have no control over whether they tell people that you have a book or not. So I wish I'd have done that. I didn't start doing that until at least 2, maybe 3 years in. And
yeah, I think that people think, well, nobody cares to hear from me, or nobody wants to hear from me, or nobody, and that's really not the point of having your newsletter. The point is, whether they want to hear from you or not, you have access to them. And so, and that's really the point. And then you figure out what works best for your audience. You know, sometimes for people, it's just sending out an email when they have a new release, or if they have a freebie, or if they have, you know, a bit of news. For other people, it's just kind of a weekly or bi-monthly newsletter just saying, hey, guess what's going on in my life? Sort of thing. And you have to figure that out. But it's absolutely. It's for you, not really for them, kind of thing. You know?
Kind of, because
I mean, you can make it for them. You need to give value, but in the beginning, that newsletter is for you to have something to hold on to and an audience. Yeah.
And I've heard a lot of people say, well, I don't know. I don't have anything to say. I don't know what to say. And it's like, well, that's okay. That's fine. That again, that's not really the point. The point is that's the only way you can 100% guarantee that you can let that person know when you have a new release. So, you know, look at, you know, what I did in the early days was I signed up for a few authors' newsletters that I liked their books just to see what they were doing. So, you know, that's the thing that you can do. But that newsletter is pure gold. And
it's really, I think it's smart to see what other people are doing, especially in your genre, and just kind of see what people, because that's going to give you kind of an idea of what that genre are interested in, or that, especially if they're, you know, like if you're writing cozy witch paranormals, then you can see what other people, you know, so that gives you a good idea. So we like to also ask, what assumptions did you make at the beginning of your writing career, and did they turn out to be right or wrong?
Well, I knew from the beginning it was going to be hard work. I never had this idea that I was going to be floating around like Barbara Cartland.
With the big hair and the jewels and all that.
And the flowing gowns. No, I mean,
more's the pity. More's the pity.
I knew the days of, big release parties or getting your book in bookstores was kind of a thing of the past. I had really pretty much let that go by that time. Which I think was good, because I've seen too many young writers, and by young I mean new, not young in age, with this dream of being in a bookstore, and so they chase after something that's not a good option for them just to meet that goal. Mm-hmm. So, and my books have been in bookstores, but without any big traditional publishing house helping me. So, that's a thing that can happen. But I thought it would take much longer than it did for me to be able to do this full time. So that was kind of a good thing to be wrong about.
Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely.
And that's not something, of course, that always happens. You can't guarantee that's going to happen. But I had been writing and working at it for a long time before that. Mm-hmm. So this was a 20-year overnight success.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what's so hard about indie publishing in general, but indie publishing in particular, because you can't really tell someone what the magic bullet is.
Right.
Because it is a combination of things. Like for me, it was that newsletter list that I had built before the book came out. But then on the other hand, I did write the best book I could, so it sort of all stacks on top of each other. And then I got some exposure. I mean, so unfortunately there's just not the magic bullet. All you can do is
there
practices
isn't. And I wrote to market at that time without knowing that was what I was doing. Yeah. I didn't know right to market wasn't like a terminology that
correct. Yeah.
But I loved reading urban fantasy, paranormal romance. So I knew precisely what readers were looking for. I knew what the covers looked like. I wanted to have a book that was basically indistinguishable from traditional publishing, as at first glance, at least. So I got the professional editor. I got the professional cover designer. I, didn't try putting up some cheap thing that I'd put together myself, because that would have been a disaster, and I was smart enough to know that. And so I think that had a lot to do with it. Now, unfortunately, what I didn't know that's what I was doing. So future series weren't necessarily that way until I realized what I'd done, how I'd done it. And then I was like, oh, well, I'm going to do that again. So I was able to then replicate that with a different genre.
But go ahead, Sarah.
I was going to say, but you didn't give up. I think that if there's like any magic bullet, it's that you keep going and you keep trying things. And, I appreciate you sharing that it started out well and it kind of dipped and came back, because a lot of people, you don't hear people talk about, oh, well, it didn't go so well for me during this time. And so, everyone has this image that everyone's career is like this upward trajectory, how do you say that? And it's not always.
It's more of a roller coaster.
Yes.
Both literally and figuratively.
Exactly. I mean, there was a couple of years where, it was pretty grim, but it was like, and it wasn't just for me. Those were years where, KU2 came in and things like that. And a lot of people's careers were tanking, not just mine. And there were a lot of people that gave up writing at that time, but it wasn't something I wanted to do. And I don't think it was something I could do. Right. For me, this has been a career from the very beginning, and I've treated it that way. And every business, whether it's a Fortune 500 company or a mom and pop shop, has its ups and downs.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, this too shall pass.
Very true.
Yeah. And I think if we've talked about this on the podcast too. I mean, if we recap even right now, writing knowing your genre expectations and kind of writing to those, an email list, reading in the genre you write in, those, and not giving up, I mean, knowing that it's not always going to be an upward trajectory. It's going to go up and down.
Yeah.
I just think those are so, so important for all authors, but especially new authors to remember, or authors who've been in it a while and haven't seen any success yet. It's not because it's not coming. It just means we can't give up. I mean, the only way we fail is if we give up. So
exactly. It's funny because I have seen a few authors who've had many books out, who've been doing this for a long time, who never made any money, even had a series that was maybe an older series that out of the blue just started taking off. A lot of times it's because maybe it was published too early or too late for what was popular, what was the market wanted. Right. And the market's come back around, or it's gotten there. Yeah. And all of a sudden they're making money and they're like, that happens. This is the great thing about indie publishing, which is, I think, not something that we've really seen before because of the way traditional publishing worked. You had X amount of time to make money and then you were out.
Right.
And now with indie publishing, you can just have those books on your shelf forever. And readers go in cycles, like romance in particular. I've seen this happen where paranormal romance was kind of a big deal back in the 90s. And then it died. And we didn't see it again until post-Twilight. And all of a sudden, it was all paranormal romance all the time.
Right.
It's dead again. I'm not totally. We're seeing it a lot, like with reverse harem and stuff. But it's not as popular as, say, contemporary romance or whatever. But it'll come again because these things do. They always come in waves. So yeah, I've seen people who haven't made money all of a sudden make money, and the only way you're going to fail is just giving up.
Yeah, exactly. So, have you ever made a mistake that turned out to be a good thing?
I was thinking about that the other day because I was reading the questions, and I was kind of trying to figure out what that was. And definitely, signing with that publisher wasn't what I would say a good thing. However, it taught me some very valuable lessons.
Right.
And it also, in a weird way, gave me the confidence to realize that I am the only person who cares about my career.
Absolutely.
I am the best person to make decisions for my career. And putting it in someone else's hands is not something I want to do. Again. So while I would say that it was a terrible mistake career-wise, it did teach me something very valuable, because at the time I signed that contract, I don't think I'd maybe been publishing 6 months, maybe. So I was super new. I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
But it oddly gave me a lot of confidence. And over the years, as I've thought about it, it really was an excellent, valuable learning lesson.
Yeah, that's great.
That is good, though, because if you can take something bad and pull lessons out of it, that's, then it wasn't wasted. You learn something and you move on.
You said that sort of earlier when you said you were writing to market. You didn't know you were doing it.
Right.
And then you went back and reevaluated and went, why are these successful? Oh, this is why,
Yeah.
So it's constantly looking at that. I think we can, it's really easy, and I do this, to have a chip on your shoulder. And if something doesn't work or people don't like it or whatever, you're just like, well, I'm not going to say a bad word because you're trying to keep it very PG. But we are like, well, just forget it. I'm not going to, and we can't do that.
Yeah. And there will be things. There will be things. I mean, there's definitely some series that I did, and I didn't write them to market, and because I didn't realize what I was doing. And so they didn't do particularly well. They might have a small following, but it's not enough to really make any money. And so it's not worth putting more into them. And I probably carried them more than, further through more books than they should have been. And I just couldn't understand at that time why. I do now. Mm-hmm. And in some situations, they simply can't be fixed. They're too intertwined. And I'm like, they are what they are. They're going to be there. Whoever wants to read them can read them.
Right.
I've put enough effort. And other ones, I've looked at them and gone, I can do better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll talk about some of the changes you've made and stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But do you think that, is it just experience that you've gained that you've been able to look back and figure out which ones are worth working on and which ones are worth just leaving alone? Or do you have other authors that you hash things out with? Or?
Yeah. I've hashed things out with other authors. And, to be honest, one of the series that I didn't rewrite it or anything like that. I just put new covers on it, trying to appeal to a different market. And, it simply didn't work. So that was $700, but it was a tax write-off. So that's
exactly. Yeah.
But the thing is it's a mashup of post-apocalyptic and romance and adventure, and there are dragons in it. And so the romance readers, the paranormal romance readers, it's not paranormal enough because it isn't. It's more sci-fi. Sci-fi readers, they're not interested. They want aliens and spaceships. Mm-hmm. Post-apocalyptic readers want, viruses and atom bombs and zombies, mm-hmm. So it doesn't really fit anything, and it's so not to market. And there's no way to rewrite it to mm-hmm. make it to market that wouldn't take a ton of work. And so I did put new covers on it, and it was a waste of money. It's a thing that is never going to take off.
But you tried it, and so now you know. Yep. Otherwise, you might always be thinking, what else can I do? So
exactly, and I'd be fussing over it in my mind. So I was like, well, I tried that, and it's just not going to happen. It's just too much of a mashup, and it's got its little readership that love it and occasionally ask me, when are you going to do more? Probably never.
So I was going to say, what about the opposite? Have you ever had what you thought was just this amazingly brilliant idea, and then it turned out to be not so great?
Well, I had this idea for years I wanted to write a cute sort of romantic comedy about my time living in London, and sort of a semi-true fictionalized story, and I wrote it and I loved it, and I turned it into a series because I'm like, this is the best. And I put it out, and crickets. And the thing is, people who read that first book they love it, absolutely love it, but it just doesn't sell. So I have got new covers for it, and I'm going to do some little tweaks to it, and put it back out and see, because romantic comedies are pretty hot right now, and
That's what I wrote.
Weren't. Yep. Yes. Well, and they weren't as hot when I originally put them out. They were, people were. There was a few out there, but they weren't doing as well as contemporary romances or whatever. Yeah. So I'm kind of hoping that with the new covers that are more to what the market is right now, it might work. If not, it is what it is. And
it is what it is. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So speaking of new covers, though, you've just done a whole recovering of a cozy series, correct?
Right. I have one series that it was actually my first series, and I made a few mistakes when I was writing that, and it didn't really take off. And one of the mistakes was poor covers. Mm-hmm. They were okay, but they weren't what people were looking for in cozy. So I recovered them. Mm-hmm. So I have that series, and I have another series that was a completely different genre that I'm completely rewriting into a cozy series. So I've got two different things going on.
So we want to hear about it all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you did a post in the 20 Books to 50K group about recovering the cozies, correct?
Yes.
And that's all you did?
That is all I did. That was, it's a contemporary cozy mystery series. And I knew the covers weren't great, but they weren't terrible. And they had been wide, and I put them in KU because someone, recommended that. But it didn't really help. So they were in KU. They were selling terribly. And I had met Mariah Sinclair at the 20 books to 50K conference in Vegas. And I said, someone told me she was the cozy mystery queen. And I was like, Mariah, can you look at this? Can you make this better? She's like, I'm like, I think it's the wrong cover. And she looked at it and she goes, oh yeah. So I was fortunately able to hire her to do a complete rebrand, recover on the, I wouldn't say rebrand, more a recover on the series. So she did all new covers for the whole series. They're super cute.
Yes, they are. Yes.
And I just love them. Absolutely love them. And it picked up, and they are selling solidly now. It's not my best-selling series, but it's selling very solidly. And so I'm actually writing new books in the series at this point because there's now enough eyes on the series to make it worth my time to write more.
Yeah. Well, and if it's okay with you, I'd love to put the 2 covers in our show notes for people to see, because the first cover is not bad.
No, it isn't.
No, it's a cute cover.
Yeah.
You can definitely see the difference.
The new ones, like, they just have a little, just like extra something that like as a cozy reader, I go, ooh, let me look more at this. This looks good, And so that's so hard to define. That's why covers are so important.
Yes. And it's really important. And like the first cover, she did what I asked her. She did a good job. It's not a bad cover. You can certainly tell it's a cozy mystery, but it just wasn't what readers in the genre were looking for. It didn't grab them.
Yeah.
And I think and that's so important. So yeah.
And what I found interesting too is that the color scheme is pretty much the same. Like, it's not like you went from pastels to this bright, these bright, bold colors. They're both sort of the same color scheme. I was very interested in, I sat there and stared at them for a while because I thought, wow, they are different, but it's not like they're night and day different.
It's like, this is why writers can't talk to cover artists, because we're like, we don't know why that works, but we love it. But just
exactly. Well, see, and with Mariah, I basically let her do what she wanted, because I had no clue. Honestly, I didn't know what to do. And so she, I just told her about the series. She saw the original covers. And she did that first book, The Corpse in the Cabana, and she showed me the cover, and I went, it's so amazing. I just loved it. Actually, the body in the bathtub's probably my favorite cover, but yeah, the whole series, she just really, really nailed it.
Yeah. So tell us about your the total rebrand you're doing. That's
right.
It's quite a job. It sounds
that is quite. Yeah, it's a big job. A few years back, I wrote a paranormal romance series with witches, and it was tied into my big best-selling urban fantasy paranormal romance series. It was kind of a spin-off, but it didn't sell. And by the time I put out book 4, it had just tanked. I think for my release of that book, if I'm remembering correctly, I only had like 127 purchases. Oh. And that was like the worst release I ever had.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't understand, because they were, they were romances. They had the romance in them. They had a mystery, like subplot, if you will. I just couldn't figure out why they weren't selling, even though I even changed at one point the subtitle or something to make it obvious that it was part of that world. Didn't work. And so, it had been languishing. And I was wanting to write a paranormal cozy series because I enjoy them so much. And I'd been discussing things with some different authors and kind of came up with this brainstorm of, well, why not take this series that isn't selling and turn it into something that might sell better? Mm-hmm. And I knew it was a huge gamble, and I knew it would take a lot of work. But of all my series, that was the most likely to work. Mm-hmm. So I had bought a pre-made set of covers from Mariah that ended up actually being perfect for that project. So I rewrote the first book, and I basically took it out of that world and put it in its own world. We still had the mystery element. I toned down the darker aspects, took out the swearing, took out the sex, I turned it into a cozy paranormal witch cozy mystery. And I put it out and sold a little bit. And then I got the second one out. By the time I got the third one out, it actually started selling. And in the first 4-5 months, I made more than I did in the whole 4 years that it was out as the other series.
Oh my gosh, I got chills. That's so awesome.
So, again, it's not my best selling series by far, but it is now actually making money, and it's actually made back the cost I put into it. So it's been well worth the time. And I'm actually working on the fourth book right now. And then I have a fifth book plan, which the original series didn't have a fifth book. So that'll actually be a totally new book. And then I'll be done with that series because it's just a short-term series. But yeah, it's been well worth it. Like, it went about as well as I could have imagined, because it just looking back, I can kind of see why maybe it didn't sell, kind of, but definitely I couldn't turn it 100% to market, but it's about 80% because it's a little bit darker than your typical cozy. And it follows a different witch in each book, which is not typical of cozies. So it's about 80% of what people want in a cozy, but it's selling solidly now. And so it, definitely worth the risk.
So why do you think that it didn't work as a paranormal romance?
Well, I think for one thing, it was a spin-off of that other series, which that other series had one person through the whole book, through the whole series. And it was very much, she was a vampire hunter, and it was very active and, whatever. And this was more in the paranormal romance vein rather than the more urban fantasy vein.
Right. Okay.
And so I think that readers who went from that, it was too different. That's one issue. Also, paranormal romance was kind of on the downslide, so it wasn't selling as well. Possibly also the mystery element might have thrown people. I'm not sure, because I have read, paranormal romances where there's some kind of mystery, but it may have been too much of a mystery and not enough of a romance. So, which works great for a cozy.
Exactly.
So the romance elements are still there. They're toned down a little, so, but I think it's a nice balance for a cozy.
Yeah, that's great. So I just love that. I'm sorry, Sarah. No, you go ahead. I just love that throughout this entire interview, you have told us the things that didn't work and what you did to make them work, and how, and And if they didn't, you moved on. And I just love that spirit and that attitude, because that's why you're successful, because you just don't let it get you. I mean, I'm sure you've had your bad days, but I mean, you just keep moving forward. You keep trying new things. That is the key. I just think in this business, that's the key.
It's a little bit of a challenge for me. I love that challenge of sort of fixing things. Like, I'm like, okay, this thing isn't working. Why isn't it working? And what can I do to make it work? Or do I need to let it go?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that in the 20 books post, you said when you recovered that series, you knew that the story was good. And you kind of know, like you're going through, well, can I work on the story? Can I work on the cover?
Yeah.
You're really analytical almost in a way. So I think that's really cool.
Well, and it helps to really know your subject, like your genre. People have come into some of the cozy groups. I'm going to write cozies now. Well, have you read a cozy? No, they've never read a cozy. Well, how can you write a cozy if you've never read one?
Okay, so this is my hobby horse. Jamie's too. Especially when people say, "Well, I want to write a cozy," and they're like, they describe this book, and I say, "Does it have a dead body?" And they're like, "Oh, well, not really." I'm like, "It's not a cozy. It's not a cozy mystery."
Yeah, all my cozies pretty much. I mean, some of the shorter ones, like I do a little, like a Christmas novella or something, and those might not have a dead body. Like they might have some other kind of mystery. But I like dead bodies. Oh, that sounds terrible. Not in real life, only in books. But there's usually at least two in my books, typically speaking. But I have been reading cozies since I was a child. And so I know them so well. So I very much knew that Viola Roberts' Cozy Mysteries were meeting what readers were looking for in a contemporary cozy mystery. So
but they just weren't finding them, right?
They weren't finding them. That was the problem. And I knew that. So because I had to take a good hard look at it. Now there might be, the first book takes place at a writer's convention in St. Pete's, Florida, which you may or may not recognize that location.
We're laughing because that's neat. Novelist Inc. is held every year.
Exactly. And in 2015, I went to Novelist Inc. And I saw that Pepto-Bismol pink building. And I just had this idea for this cozy mystery and this character. And I was like, and I actually started writing it there. So that book came first, and technically she lives in Astoria, Oregon, which is a charming little coastal town here. So if you're really playing to market, probably the first book should take place in that town and then have them travel out of the town for the next book. So that may have been a mistake, but I kind of knew that probably wouldn't stop people reading the series if they loved it. So I knew that I really had to fix something from a discoverability standpoint. And one of those things was putting it in KU. That did not work until I changed the covers. So 100% it was the covers. And now I have some plans when I launch the new books for some marketing and promotions and things. Not expensive plans. I'm very careful about how I spend my ads and promo money. But I think I'm going to really see some great numbers once I do put out that new book.
That's great. So that's interesting because that brings us to the next kind of question that we had about, you have some books wide and you have some books in KU, correct? Yeah. So tell us your kind of thinking about that, your strategy, why you've done, so many.
Well, the Sunwalker books are in KU because the first 3 books are with an Amazon imprint. So they have to be in KU. So there was no point in having the rest of the series not in KU. I didn't like being all in KU. I don't like that feeling. So I tended to go wide with the rest of the series, although I've experimented here and there. Initially, Viola was not in KU, but because she was not selling anywhere, someone suggested putting her in KU to see if I could get her discovered. And I did, and it didn't work until I rebranded. When I first published my Lady Rample mysteries, which are set in 1930s London, I put those wide, and I actually built up a following where I make a nice little chunk of change every month off of Kobo and through Draft to Digital and so on. And so someone again suggested I put them in KU, and I'm like, why would I do that? I'm making money wide. Why would I do that?
Yeah.
So I decided, though, when I wrote my Sugar Martin cozy mysteries, which are set in the late 1940s, also in England, that I put those straight into KU and see how that goes. And that's gone pretty well. I may take them out and put them wide at some point, and do that. But I like to play with things. I'm all about the money. I mean, let's be honest here. So where I can make money, that's where I go. And I don't like to mess with things that are successful. Lady Rample's successful wide, so I'm not going to mess with it. I put the witch cozies into KU because honestly, with para cozies, from what I'm seeing, the successful ones are in KU. That's where the readers are.
Yeah.
So, and I get very few actual buys of that series. I get mostly page reads. That's where I make the bulk of my money. So, I'm sure there's people with para cozies that are wide that are doing well, but it's a lot of work to get sales wide. And it takes a long time to build up, and so, again, I will probably at some point take them out of KU once sales in KU kind of trickle off, go wide and see about creating a wider audience for those. Yeah. But yeah, that's just kind of my thing, I guess.
Well, I think that's great.
I kind of look at how well things sell between KU versus wide, because there's some genres that are simply all the readers are in KU. It's just how it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other genres that you can get away with going wide and building an audience if you're willing to take the time. So that's how I judge. I don't just go, well, I'm going all in KU or I'm going all in wide. I look at where the market is and try to make an educated guess as to which the best option is.
Yes. Analyzing there again, instead of just making a sweeping, let's do this or that. You think about it. So, but I think we need to talk more about Lady Rample because she's, she's kind of your flagship wide series, right? So,
yeah, she is.
And to me, hearing about how much you loved Agatha Christie, was that just because you loved those type of books? How did you get into writing that?
I love mysteries. I love murder mysteries. I watch an inordinate amount of true crime, murder shows, serial killer documentaries, but also a lot of Murder, She Wrote. I binged watched Murder, She Wrote just from beginning to end. Wow. It used to be on Netflix, and I watched the whole thing, including all the movies. I love murder mysteries. I do. I love it so much. So when I had this idea for Viola, I wrote her first, and she didn't sell well. And there's my analytical brain again. I realized there were some things I did in addition to not having great, covers that were really working. I didn't, I advertised it to my readership, which were all romance readers and urban fantasy readers. And it messed up my also bots and the algorithms and so on. So that was part of the problem.
Right.
David Cochran could probably talk on that a lot.
So our listeners know how I feel about David Cochran. I am a disciple. Yeah.
He's a smart man. He knows things. So when I wrote Lady Rample, the first Lady Rample, she actually came to me in a dream. I actually dreamt of her. Wow. As a character. She had a cigarette in one hand. She doesn't smoke, actually, but in my dream she did. She had a cigarette in one hand and a cocktail in the other, and she was dressed like Katharine Hepburn in the 1930s, complete with wide-leg trousers and the whole 9 yards. And she was just talking away, and part of the dream was I actually dreamt the covers, the 2 of the titles.
Wow.
And that they were bestsellers. Mm-hmm. It took about a year of me noodling over that before I was able to write the first book, but because I have to noodle over things.
We do too.
Yeah.
So I did my noodling. I wrote the first book. I put it out. It did not take off for about 2 months. All I did was I didn't advertise it to my newsletter. Instead, I did an Amazon ad, $1 a day, and I just let it run.
That's awesome.
I didn't advertise it to my readership until it had been out for, I think, 2 weeks, something like that.
Wow.
After about 2 months, I was selling an average of 1 book a day. And I'm like, this may have been a huge mistake. And then after 2.5 months, all of a sudden, I was selling 20 books a day.
Oh,
what's happening?
That's fantastic.
What's happening?
Yeah.
And anyway, so there we go. And now she is definitely my bestseller. I have a very good month anytime I put out a new Lady Ramble. She's a huge favorite of mine.
And obviously of the readers too.
Yeah. But I read a lot. I mean, when I published her, there were not many books. I think, Sara, you might have had 1 or 2.
We were close. Yeah.
Yeah. We came out pretty close to each other. You might have been out a little bit before me. And Lee
Strauss.
Was it Lee Strauss might have?
Yeah.
And then there were some traditionally published authors, but there was not very many 20s, 30s era cozies at that time. But the ones that were there, I read them because I wanted to know what readers' expectations were for that genre. Yeah. I knew what mine were.
Yeah.
I wanted to know what theirs were. Yeah. And so I really deliberately wrote that to market, but in a way that suited my personality and storytelling and what I wanted to do. And it worked. It just worked. So now I think I just published book 9.
Yeah. So you have that one. It's set in the 30s, right?
Yeah.
And now you have a second series that's set in the
late 40s,
early 50s. So, so do you just enjoy that historical?
I do. Aspect? And here's the funny thing with the Sugar Martin, which she starts in 1948. Actually, again, that was a pre-made set of covers from Shea that I just fell in love with. And I'm like, I don't have a story. I don't write this. I just bought it. Yeah, I just bought it. And she was like, I'm so glad you bought it because it so fits your brand. And I'm like, okay, but I don't have an idea. And I'm not a person that buys covers just to buy covers.
Right.
But it was funny because within a couple of weeks of buying those covers, maybe not, it was within 24 hours of buying those covers. Boom. Like that, I had an idea. And I just ran with it. And, she took a little while to take off, but she's selling pretty solidly. And people especially liked, I put out a Christmas story and people really loved it. So she's doing well, and I'm going to put another couple out this year, hopefully. That's the plan anyway.
It's still early in the year. It's only May.
Yeah.
Only May. Oh my gosh.
May.
Exactly.
Very good. Well, this has been awesome. Can you tell people what you think you've done to set yourself up for success?
From the beginning, I decided I was going to treat this like a business. Not just, I'm an author, this is my art. No, this is my business, and I am an entrepreneur. I'm a businesswoman. And initially I was like, and I'm going to get up at 8:00 in the morning and blah, blah. No. I decided if I was going to work for myself, I was going to work in a way that worked for me. So no, I do not get up at 8:00 in the morning. I am not a morning person. I write in the afternoon. So, and the joy of being an independent author is I can work when I want.
Yes.
And wear my pajamas. So,
great.
But from a business standpoint, I was going to treat it like a business. I was going to learn the business to the best of my ability. I'm not great at everything, but I'm going to learn it. I'm going to hire professionals to do the things I cannot or don't want to do. And I'm going to learn my trade to the best of my ability. And I'm not going to give up because I am stubborn as bleep. So yeah, I think if you're going to do this, you can't half do it unless you just want it to be a hobby.
Yeah.
And that's fine if that's where you are in your life, in your business. But, and if you only want to write and give it to someone else to do all the rest of the work, you can do that. That's a viable thing, but not a lot of people make a living that way.
No, it's very hard.
True.
And I want to make not just a living, I want to make a good living. I want to have a rich life that satisfies me. And I really feel like I'm providing something of value to people. I never let anyone denigrate the fact that I write genre fiction. I've had people sneer in my face that cozies aren't real mysteries. I don't really care what you say. Cozies bring people joy, and this world needs a little joy right now. It seems weird to say murder is joy.
But it is. It's so bizarre. It's such a weird crossing of two things, but I think it's because cozies, the emphasis is on the puzzle and figuring things out. And I don't know about you, but I bet you have also received like lots of email during this COVID time. Of people saying, thank you so much. You've taken my mind off things. And I think, if I can do that, then
before I put out the latest Lady Rample, I had announced that she was going to be out within the next couple of weeks. And I was flooded with emails of people so excited. I need her right now. I need her so much. Like, she's a real human person that is coming to their house to take care of them and serve them cocktails for the next. And I'm like, that is exactly what the world needs right now. So it's important. What we do, I think, is really important. I get to make money doing it.
That's awesome. It's fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing so much with us today. And
thanks for having me.
Telling us about your ups and downs. So tell people where they can find out more about you and your books.
Well, they can find me on my website, which is SheaMacLeod.com, SheaMacLeod.com. You can also find me on Facebook. My Facebook page for cozies is Shea MacLeod Cozy Mysteries. And I'm on Instagram as Shea MacLeod _author.
Okay.
So
Great.
Pretty much everywhere.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. It was awesome. Awesome interview.
You had a great time.
It's been great. And you will have all the links to everything and the images about the covers in the show notes on our website, wishidknownthenforwriters.com. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. We hope this episode inspired you, empowered you, and made you laugh a little bit too. If you loved it, tell your friends about it. And if you feel so inclined, leave us a review. We look forward to being with you again next week.